Hey Econ students, happy Wednesday. Some reminders, you guys technically have off tomorrow and Friday. I'm going to give you guys some kind of an assignment for you guys to just practice. Nothing wild. It might just be like a review, review questions. I know that they're going to be, most of them are multiple choice. I don't know what to tell you. I also am probably going to send out a Google form about whether or not you're thinking about taking the AP in May or June. Some people have been asking, like, my advice. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. Like, no one's going to get penalized for one way or the other. But if everyone's like, hands in, let's do June, it just changes how I teach for right now. If everyone's like, hey, let's go, and get my macro out of the way, and your call. So that's why I'm going to just kind of send that out there just to kind of inform some of my instruction. Technically, this is our last unit. So Intro to Factor Markets is actually one of our, it's not really. We should also be doing government intervention and externalities. But again, because of College Board, they're saying that that's not going to be relevant for the test. I can still teach it, obviously. I don't know how many of you seniors still, again, even care. I don't know. But I'm hoping that with all of these different changes and stuff like that, that maybe you're at least committed to giving it 45 minutes of your best, twice, for macro and micro. Just reminding you that there's two. Yay! So there's that. But again, nothing to overwhelm you. If ever anyone's like, oh my goodness, these are my holidays. I know that there's a bunch, between Passover, Easter. So again, there's no stress, but just communicate with me. That's all I ask. I feel like I'm not asking for anything wild. Again, even for those people who aren't able to watch the videos at the time and then you submit me, then I just go back, I change, like, nothing wild. All right, super, super flexible. Module work too, I'm being super flexible with. Keep that in mind. You might have also saw, I wrote you a little note in yesterday's assignment. And apparently the district only bought 60 licenses. So for those of you that are signing on late, because Mr. Devlin and I had discussed this, and he gave out the codes to his class too. So, blame them. They beat you to it. So you had to go fast. So if you didn't get it yet, I'm going to say first, I'm sorry. I can't guarantee that we're going to get them. I sent an email. I don't know if we have secretaries that can work that out, right? I have no idea. So if you're in dire need, I'll give you I'll give you mine for right now. If you're like, oh my God, I need to know what it says. I doubt that any of you are finding it to be that dire of a situation, but if you do, and you're having hot flashes or something, just call me. I will also call a doctor. Why are you having hot flashes? But that's another note. Okay, I'm going to introduce you guys to factor markets. This is probably going to be one of my most boring. I'm not really drawing that much because I'm just really introducing the fact to you. Like I said, I'm going to send you guys these notes as well, and some of the stuff's just going to be reminder stuff that we did in the beginning. So you guys will see that as well. Since I'm not going to see you guys again until after our break, I wish all of you very happy holidays, and I hope that you guys are able to, enjoy them the best that you can. I know we're doing a virtual Easter dinner, so I'm really looking forward to that. I can't even say bad things right now because this is a recording, and I don't know how many of you would be like, I'm going to blackmail you with that video, that one time that you said something mean about I'm like, oh no, I'm not playing that game. And I feel like it's Jeremy. He'd be pulling it up from 10 years. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I like that about him. All right. I'm digressing. Let's go into factor markets. All right, so you guys probably remember this absolutely amazing graphic organizer that I made you guys draw out. Well, guess what? It's back. So if you guys remember, we have a product market, we have a resource market, and then we remember that individuals supply in the resource market, but they demand in the product market. And then businesses demand in the resource market and then supply in the product market. We've already done the product market. We've already discussed firms producing a product and their total revenues and their total costs. We've already discussed that. So now we're moving to the other side, which is the resource market. All right, just to be a little bit more redundant, because I feel like I don't repeat myself enough, just as a recap of that graphic that I made you guys draw out. Again, in the product market, businesses, aka producers, will be the ones that supply, and then households, meaning individuals, were the ones that were demanding. We already did that. Done. Now, this is our focus. Our focus is our resource market. Remember that another name for the resource market was a factor. All right, factor market. So again, factor meaning resources, also meaning inputs. And then again, businesses are going to be the one, or producers are going to be the ones that demand factors or demand resources. And households, individuals, are going to be the ones that go and supply it. So again, just remember that when you go and you say yes to a job, it's because you are supplying your labor. That's what you are doing. One of the first things that you learned about in this course were the 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So going back again, notice that I went and I put in what we called factor payments: the wage, the rent, the interest, and the profit, just for fun so that you remember what those were. Those were called, again, factor payments. But going back and saying, notice that I have stars next to 3 of them. Again, because land, labor, and capital are the only ones that can be exchanged in these factor markets. Entrepreneurship cannot be exchanged in the factor markets. So what you guys will see is that we do have supply and demand of land, labor, and capital that will actually create equilibrium prices and quantities. All right, so let's go through each of these situations and just identify, is it the product market or the factor market, aka resource market, whichever one you like to use. So Sam working at Target. Sam working at Target would be a resource market because Sam is supplying his labor to Target. So that's resource market. John buying a hamburger. John buying a hamburger would be the product market. Whole Foods paying rent would be the resource market. Whole Foods needs a place or an establishment in order to go and sell their products. Them going and paying rent, that's going to be the resource market. Chipotle hiring workers, again, also going to be the resource market. And then Starbucks selling coffee, that's going to be the product market. So just like we had varying degrees of market structures, we also have varying degrees of resource markets. So we're going to see, just like when we saw with the product markets, we had perfect competition, and then we had 3 types of imperfect competition. We had perfectly competitive firms, we had oligopolies, monopolistic competitions, and then the monopoly being at the far end. In a resource market, we've got 2 potential structures: perfect competition and then a monopsony. So again, whereas the 2 extremes back in the product market were perfect competition or perfectly competitive, and our other was the monopoly. And you guys are going to see that there's going to be a lot of similarities between a monopsony and a monopoly. So some characteristics about a perfectly competitive labor market. Many small firms are hiring workers. No one firm is large enough to manipulate the market. There are many workers with identical skills, therefore a wage is constant. Workers are going to be wage takers, very similar to when we were talking about a perfectly competitive product market, where again, the firms were price takers. And then firms can hire as many workers as they want at that wage set by the industry. So now when we're referring to demand, the demand is the different quantities of workers that businesses are willing and able to hire at various wages. we're going to see that there is an inverse relationship between wage and the quantity of labor being demanded. Again, we don't want to pay workers that much money, so for a higher amount of money, we're not going to hire as many. As we're able to pay them less and less, we'd be willing to hire more. What is the supply of labor? Supply is the different quantities of individuals that are willing and able to sell their labor at different wages. And again, you guys know this because some of you even said, oh, if you could find a job that could pay you at least this, then maybe you would stop playing that sport or stop doing that extracurricular activity that you love doing. Because there is a price that you'd be willing to give up, that leisure. And we know that there's a direct relationship or positive relationship between wage and quantity of labor being supplied. And again, that you do have a trade-off between work and leisure, and that sometimes you say no to things like overtime, or you say no to, taking on extra tasks or doing things that your parents asked you to do for money because you think that the opportunity cost is not worth it. You'd rather be doing something else. So again, we all have that ability to say no if we don't feel like the opportunity is worth giving up whatever leisure or exciting thing we were going to do in that time. But sometimes you've heard people, I'm sure, like, oh, I got an overtime opportunity and I couldn't pass it up. And a lot of times that's the case because it's such good money. How can you say no? Okay, it's not a trick question. So I asked you who demands labor. Firms are the ones that demand labor. So that's where this gets confusing, because in the product market, firms supplied, but in the resource or the factor market, firms are the ones demanding. They need labor. They need people to work for them. And even just thinking right now, actually, that so many companies are having this issue right now because of so many people that are sick that they're trying to hire new people, and they're actually trying to do crazy things like not have interviews or do video or text message interviews because they just need people to start right away. So again, they're the ones that demand labor. And then the demand for labor shows that the quantity of workers that the firms will hire will be different at different wage rates. And notice again that as the wage rate falls, the quantity demanded increases. And vice versa, as wage increases, the quantity demanded is going to fall. Again, even just thinking about what you guys have seen recently with minimum wage going up, minimum wage goes up, companies are not going to employ as many people. They're going to potentially lay people off, cut back people's hours, because now the cost of labor is too high and it's going to cut into their profits. Again, vice versa, who supplies labor? We do. Individuals supply labor. So going back, in the product market, individuals made up the demand curve. Individuals were demand. Now in the resource or the factor market, we are the supply. So we supply our labor. So it's the number of workers that are willing to work at all of the different wage rates. There's a higher wage given to workers as an incentive to leave other industries or to give up leisure activities. So again, that's why when you hear about something like overtime is your pay and a half, time and a half, they call it. Sometimes if it's holiday or something like that, you might even get double time or paid, that much extra. Or if to work a night shift, they'll pay you, extra money to incentivize you to go and take that up, which is also partially, I have to imagine, some of the reason that you guys are working your butts off, either in this class or other classes, trying to get into really good schools, because a higher wage gives you an incentive to work hard, to become that doctor, to become that lawyer, to become that accountant. So again, as wage increases, the quantity supplied increases. As wage decreases, the quantity supplied decreases. I think you guys got that. Nothing fancy here, just equilibrium. So this is the wage or the price of labor that's set by the market. Again, the labor supply, again, this is individuals. And then the labor being demanded, again, that's by firms or businesses. I don't know why I just wrote I. Here we go. Individuals or households, if you like that. And then the labor demand is, again, from firms. If you like the word businesses better, that's great. Okay, so let me first start off with a little, I have no idea if these numbers are correct. That's not really what it's about. It's really about why surgeons earn a lot more than gardeners. So if anyone's gonna like come at me and be like, actually, Miss Izzo, the surgeons actually have an average salary of, like, don't play that game with me. All right, change the number to be whatever you want. I know some of you guys want to be doctors and things. I know Katie Margolis is like, wait, only $137,050? Like, no way. I'm just joking, Katie Margolis. I know that you're in it for the children. But regardless, that surgeons earn more than gardeners. And again, if anyone has, I'm not talking about like if your family owns like a crazy cool landscaping business. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, I think I've digressed enough there. So again, notice too that we have a very limited supply of surgeons. Why? Why do we have a limited supply of surgeons? Well, first of all, you have to be super, super smart, pass all of those tests. It's also super expensive to go to med school. So for all of those reasons, our supply is much more limited. And P.S., maybe you don't want the school necessarily to be super expensive, but you want your doctors to be super smart and to be able to pass all of those tests. Just in case you're like, yeah, it's annoying how many hoops they have to jump through. Nope, I'm happy how many hoops that they have to jump through. That makes me feel very, very safe. And look at them right now, risking their lives day in and day out. Again, if any of your family members, give them a big hug from me. Okay, and then continuing, going back to the supply and demand for gardeners, notice again there is a large supply of gardeners because, I hate to say that anyone can do it because I probably couldn't. I don't like dirt. I don't like worms. Again, it's not for everybody, but you don't have to have an education level. You don't have to have a specific skill level. There's no specific talent. There's no tests. There's really no barriers to entry, essentially, which is why we have such a high supply of them. And again, they're going to get paid much less in comparison. So hopefully this was a good intro for you guys. I'm sorry if it feels like I was just talking a lot and throwing supply and demand graphs at you, but it's the best I could do. All right, and then we are going to, we're going to keep going with this. Enjoy your break. I'm doing air quotes for the break, by the way. All right, bye guys.